Now, the rest of this material in the book is going to deal with step 9. There are a lot of things can come up on making amends, and our book gives us a lot of the book that deals with step 9, probably more than any other step for some reason. All the way through up to page 83 is going to deal with step 9. There are a lot of things that can come up in this particular step. And I've never seen a person with a problem, though I couldn't find an answer in the book that would deal with step 9. And the first thing he's going to tell us to do is step 9 is, now that we're willing to do this, he says, make direct amends to such people. And we're going to look at making direct amends. And whether we're talking about direct, well, one way direct is face-to-face. I heard a story not so long ago, and a guy went to his sponsor and he said, can I make my amends by mail? And his sponsor said, yeah, if you harmed them by mail, you can. But one type of direct amend would be direct face-to-face. And this is the first time we're going to look at the first thing as direct is, and probably that's the best, because we won't be in doubt what the results will be if we write a letter or call them. But if we go there on a face-to-face basis, well, the results will be more pure. We'll know what it is. We'll get the satisfaction over the guilt and remorse in a better way if it's a direct face-to-face. So the first one's going to deal with direct face-to-face, which begins kind of in the middle of the paragraph here on page 77.
Second paragraph.
Second paragraph. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are still not too keen about mending our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in the teeth. It is hard to go to the enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. We go to him in a helpful, giving spirit, confessing our former ill feelings and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply we tell him we will never get over our drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the results. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own faults. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally they will offer us assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. It's water over the dam. We have made our demonstration and done our part. It's water over the dam. So we can see here that this is obviously, we can see it's a going to another person, and it is an example of a face-to-face direct amend.
I think we need to always remember in the making of these amends that what we're really trying to do is get rid of our fear, our guilt, and our remorse associated with those things from the past. Now, hopefully those other people are going to like us, but that's not our real thing we're trying to do. The real thing is to get rid of that guilt, fear, remorse, and etc. If I write you a letter, I'm never really quite sure how you received that. I've still got some fear and some apprehension connected with that. If I call you on a telephone, I'm never really right sure. But if I can go to you wherever possible, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, one-on-one, and sit down and make my amends to you, then I never have to be concerned with that in the future. I know exactly how you received it. I know I've done my utmost to straighten it out. And whether you received it or not is really becomes your problem after that. This is what I did with the guy I hated so bad. I realized that I had hurt him also. So I finally went to him and made some amends. And halfway through the amends procedure, he said, whoa, stop, wait a minute. He said, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. And he said, what I want you to know is I'm sorry for those things I've done. And before we were through with that thing, we were good friends again. If I'd written him a letter or called him on a phone, I just do not believe that would have taken place. The end result is not only did I get rid of my guilt remorse, he got rid of his, and we became good friends again. Now, if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. The book recognizes that this is not easy for people like us to do. But surely, if we can go to them directly, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, one-on-one, we're going to get more relief from this than we will from any other way. Whether they like us or not is beside the point. Another form of direct amend is equal restitution. Remember, the step used to say complete amends. They made Bill take complete out. That sounds too much like perfection. But if I want to get rid of my guilt, if I have stolen money from you in the past, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good just to apologize to you. You're probably going to say, I'm sorry about that deal too. Where's my money? For me to get rid of my guilt, I need to make equal restitution. I need to pay you back. We deal with that on page 78. Most alcoholics owe money. I wonder how Bill knew that. We do not dodge our creditors, tell them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. You know, as long as I owe people money, I'm always going to be afraid that I'm going to run into them somewhere. And I'm always going to be concerned about what they're going to think and what they're going to say and what they're going to do. And I'm always going to feel guilty about that. If God dwells within me and I know I've stolen money, then I'm going to feel guilty about that. I think what we need to do is go to these creditors, tell them what we're trying to do, and tell them, frankly, we can't pay you today, but we can arrange a payment schedule and pay you $5 a week, $10 a week, $20 a month, whatever it takes, and pay it until such time as we pay those people off. Now, there's only about one reason I wouldn't want to do that, and that is if I'm still so selfish that I'm wanting to use today's money rather than pay back something I've stolen in the past, then I've got a problem. Maybe I need to go back and look at steps 4, 5, 6, and 7 some more. Maybe I haven't gotten rid of enough selfishness to be allowed to go ahead and do this. The final freedom comes in the paying of them off. The beginning of the freedom starts in the starting to pay them off. What we would really love to do is wait till we get their money all together in one lump sum, put it in a sack and take it there and lay it on the desk and say, here's your damn money. But let's face it, we're probably not going to do that in most cases. But we can certainly pay them over a period of time. Now some people say, well, Charlie, you don't understand. That's too much money. If we could steal it, surely we can pay it back. You know, I think we forget from step 3 on, we've got God with us. And if we are to do these things, God will make it possible to do so, providing we're willing to do our part. I have a friend who's now been sober over 30 years. At 29 years sobriety, he said, Charlie, I paid the last of them last week. And I said, Dan, how do you feel? Dan said, I feel about 8 foot tall. Now, Dan's about 5'2". He said, this is the first time in my life I can ever remember that I don't owe somebody something for what I've stolen from them in the past. And he said, I feel good about old Dan. Just took him 29 years to do that. His did involve a hell of a lot of money. Most of it's not that big a deal. Most of it's 100 here or 300 there or a couple hundred somewhere else, a few hot checks still floating around. And if we'll go to work on that, we can get rid of that stuff. You know, it feels so good today to be able to walk down the street anywhere in the world and not be afraid of running into any human being, period. It feels so good to walk in my little bank in Southwest City, Missouri, and the head cashier sees me come in and he smiles and he waves at me. Hell, used to, he ducked his head and went the other way. He didn't want to deal with me at all. It feels so great to be free of that guilt and that remorse associated with the past. These are the things that we can do and need to do to get the final peace of mind. It's not a question of whether we want to or not. The only question is, can we live without this? And if we stay blocked off from the sunlight of the Spirit, sooner or later we'll go back to drinking according to our book. Joe?
Okay. Next step goes on to say we make direct amends. wherever possible. You know, and we hear a lot of people reading that step, and sometimes even been writing it. Sometimes they used to print it over, and they would change that to whenever possible. That wouldn't be much of a step if you told a drunk to do it whenever possible. It says wherever possible. Now, we looked at the detail of the book, and we won't be able to go through all of it because of time, but the book gives us very precise detail in dealing with making amends in these pages. We just covered direct amends. That's the direct face-to-face and direct proportion of what we owe. Now, the next paragraph down on page 78 will deal with, we won't go through all of it, past criminal offenses, how you handle that. See, paragraph by paragraph, he will deal with specific areas that we need to look at. Now, over on page 79, in the middle of the paragraph, he talks about how can we handle this if others are involved. Now,
The step says we made direct amends wherever possible,
except
when to do so
Yeah.
would injure them or others. 79 on deals with when it might injure them or others.
Sometimes we can go to these people and get, as a story here on page 80, where we can go to these people and get their permission if they are involved and still make the amends. Down at the bottom of page 80, it talks about sex outside of marriage. And on page 81, how do we handle this? Specifically, it deals with each one. The bottom paragraph is talking about how much should we tell about this. So this is great detail, and I've never seen anybody had a problem with amend. I couldn't find a subject in here to really deal with. If we study this section of the book, it really deals with when we should make them, how we should make them, when we should not make them. And it will handle anybody that has any problems with making amends. Now he wraps this up, completes this over on page 83, when he says, there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we honestly say to ourselves we would right them if we could. Willingness is the key. There may be some people we cannot see. There may be some people that are going to be injured by it, so we can't make those amends. But we are still willing to do it if we could. If we can say that, willingness is the key, not making the amends, but the freedom comes through the willingness. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter, and there may be a valid reason for our postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if we can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone.
You know, I think the key to this whole thing is to be willing to make those amends wherever we possibly can.
That's right.
And if we've got an amend that we can't make because maybe they're dead, or maybe in making them we would hurt those people, or just as importantly somebody else, we don't really worry about that if we can say to ourselves honestly, I would make this amend if I could. A week ago, last Wednesday night, I had the great pleasure in Oklahoma City of making an amend that I've been owing it for 25 years. And I couldn't make that amend because it was going to harm somebody else. Finally, the situation has worked itself out. In all these years, I've been willing to make that amend, and I got to make it a week ago Wednesday night. And I got to meet a nephew that's 20 years old that I'd never seen before, simply because I've remained willing to do so all these years. It really does work if we're willing to do the things the book says to do. I think there's one person we owe an amend to, and I think that's ourselves. Now, I'm not about to say I didn't hurt other people when I was drinking, because I heard about everybody that came in contact with me, but I guarantee you one thing, I hurt me, and I hurt me bad, and we all did. And I think the finest amend that you and I can make to ourselves is to free ourselves from the past, to get rid of that guilt and that remorse and that fear associated with the past. And the only way that human beings have ever been able to do this is to make amends. 8 and 9 are the best thing we can possibly do for ourselves, because through that we free ourselves from the past. We don't have to feel that guilt and that remorse and that fear any longer if we're willing to do what 8 and 9 says. Then we become free.